One of the things that's also a political issue right now, which is the immigration debate, especially workers coming across the southern border into the states. And a person that I was listening to, Tom Hartman, was talking about that NAFTA's policies, that even though it was signed into law in '94, the corn subsidies for NAFTA, or American United States corn, didn't actually go into effect until just a few years ago, and that suddenly dispossessed Mexican farmers left and right, because their locally grown corn was now a little more expensive than American imported corn. And that's what, it's kind of like, where did the immigration problem start? Well, you can start with NAFTA and say that it's actually causing workers in Mexico to lose their jobs and have to come north to compete with United States workers.
There's some truth, rather than logically harmonizing prices and instability as a result of the trade regime and market that you've entered into in terms of people's lives and jobs and livelihoods. This has exacerbated it. We've had millions of farmers, campesinos, leave farms in Mexico. This is one of the reasons. There are other reasons as well. And of course, when they're out of work, they come here to seek work because the opportunities are so abundant here. And there's such a need. There is a need here for folks to do some of the work that goes unmet. And so they risk their lives crossing the desert to come here. And they come here in great numbers. As you know, we have in the country today somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 14 million undocumented workers. Mm-hmm. The vast majority live respected law. They live in fear because they don't have any protections of the law, and they are here undocumented. But they do provide generally very good, honest service. The immigration bill that's pending in the Congress would do several things. It's pretty much dead right now, but the one that was pending did a couple of things. It sealed the border with Mexico.
We talked about that on our radio show with SEIU and some of the workers. Mm-hmm. That sealing the border, the reason why that would actually be beneficial long term, there would actually be a cap on the number of workers in the country, and unions would actually have a point to define where's the end of the light at the end of the tunnel. Right. And once you seal that border, the business community, or the business hirers, no longer have an unlimited source of cheaper and cheaper labor. So in terms of that, I think that would have been a really smart move for American workers long term, although right now there's a lot of hostility on that issue.
There's a huge hostility, and the country is divided. Those who oppose any immigration reform are a minority, but they're a very vocal and strong minority. But today, that doesn't look like it's going anywhere, because there's not been any leadership out of the White House. President Bush's approval ratings are in the mid-20s today. He has very little support in the country, and to push an good immigration reform bill, you need leadership. Someone has capital, and he hasn't been able to do that.
Right.
John Edwards, when he's president, will be able to get us on the path to sealing our borders, protecting American jobs, and also providing a path to citizenship for those millions of undocumented workers who are here with families. And that would require to pay fines, to pay your taxes, to learn English.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's just not feasible to round up 12 million, 14 million people. Mm-hmm. And so we've got to be realistic about it. We've got to resolve, seal, if you will, the problem, mm-hmm. and then deal with those who are here. And for the most part, like most immigrants who have come into this country, my grandparents, both sides of my family, immigrated here, would be our welcome additions and would do great service to the country.
That's interesting. I ended up moving to Colorado to work against Tom Tancredo, mm-hmm. whose grandparents were also immigrants.
Where did they come from?
Italy.
Italy.
Although in his defense, he says that they went through the legal channel of immigrating. But still, I think it's still kind of ironic that he's the most vocal anti-immigrant presidential candidate on the ballot. One thing, though, in relation to that, for our righty listeners and viewers, why would a president like Bush, who's it's okay, for our righty viewers out there, what I talk to them about is they say, well, I don't understand why Bush he seems to be so one way on certain issues, but on immigration he is totally, they say, caving to Ted Kennedy or something. I said, well, actually, it seems that he's caving to business that wants to keep increasing numbers of not only immigrants, but the guest worker plan, which would be increasing not just the number of immigrants coming to the country, but the number of guest worker passes that are given out exponentially, it seems. So what would you say in terms of the guest worker part of an immigration policy?
I think it's not clear, but obviously you're going to have some kind of a program, it seems to me, to bring workers in who have certain skills to do certain work, oftentimes work that others won't do. Historically, there have been many, many millions of workers from Mexico that have come in here on guest worker programs who have picked our fruit up and down our coast. They've worked their way south all the way up to Michigan to pick our peaches and apples.
Where you're from.
Yes, and cherries. And they just follow the season and the crop. And so it's important to have that kind of workforce in place. Now that applies obviously to some other work. A lot of the work that's done in this country, and some in construction, some in the restaurant business, some in the laundry, some of the dirtier and more difficult work are done by people who migrate here primarily from Latin America.
One other issue in terms of trade, the GATT with China, I believe that stands for General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, or Trade and Tariffs. Our trade imbalance with China is growing, and at the same time, this administration, the Bush administration, is also selling our treasury notes, our dollars, or allowing China to buy up our debt. What kind of leverage will we have, if we go to, in the North American Free Trade Agreement, for example, we have some leverage with Canada and Mexico. But in terms of China, it seems that they're holding so much of our money in terms of
our
buying
paper.
our debt.
That's right.
Yeah.
They hold an enormous amount of paper.
Do we really have enough leverage to say we want to change these trade policies with China, with you, China, to make it fair for our workers, fair for your workers, fair for both sides?
Yes, we're the biggest market in the world today, and so China sells an enormous amount of their production here in the United States. Walmart alone is a company in which employees as suppliers. Most of their supplies come here from China. So yeah, we do have leverage, even though they hold a lot of our paper and our debt. But it just takes some guts, somebody who will use it. John Edwards will be the president that will do it. He will protect American workers, and he'll try to raise international standards so that we can harmonize well with China and Mexico or whoever else we trade with, so that working people are the beneficiaries as opposed to those at the very top, the corporate internationalists who have been really plundering workers' benefits and wages over the last couple decades.